zoom my link up. I can barely see.
Yep.
All right, we'll give it a couple minutes just to have everybody jump on. And where are you located, John? I know Emery said he's in Oregon. You happen to be there as well, or?
I am currently in Panama City, Panama, but I live in
Dang,
Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
nice. Jeez, are you on vacation or?
John's John's on
No.
the Panama national lacrosse team.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
Nice.
So, no, not a vacation.
Okay. Well, that's exciting. That's really cool, man. So you're good at
Yes.
lacrosse then.
I'm all right. I'm okay.
Nice. Awesome. Well, congrats. That sounds like a big deal.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can go ahead and get started here. Well, we're 1 minute past. So I appreciate everybody joining this webinar. We're going to talk a lot about payment disbursement, online visibility, some AI stuff. It's going to be pretty fun. Um, to start off with, I wanted to tell a quick story. I was talking to Emery about what they do in the disbursement process, and he gave me a chance to try it out. So he sent me a link in my email, went through a couple prompts, added my debit card, which I thought was really cool, Emery. I didn't have to use my like routing number and go find an old check. And then I submitted it and I got the payment that he sent over, which was $10 within seconds. Quicker than I was able to log in and check it out. So the process was so fast that when I logged in my bank account after doing it, it was already there. So firsthand experience, the process was really cool. I want to start off the webinar and just kind of pass the baton to Emery here. So if you want to do a quick intro, Emery and John, and then I'll let you kind of pass it over and go from there.
Yeah, John, why don't you start intro yourself and then pass it over to me?
Absolutely. Um, Good morning, good afternoon, where everybody is located. But I'm Jonathan Morgan. I am part of the sales and partnership team here at Confido Legal. So we are very excited to be on this webinar today. And I am actually located in South Florida, is my home base. So it's a little bit about me, and I will pass it to you, Emery.
Awesome. So, Emery Wager, co-founder of Confido Legal. Confido is a digital payments platform that helps law firms accept, transfer, track, and disperse, which we'll talk about today, money while helping firms comply with the rules of professional conduct. So, we originally built Confido Legal. Chris and I were talking before this as a payments acceptance tool. So we work with quite a few firms in hourly practice areas where they're getting paid by their clients directly. And then a few years into the journey there, we realized there was this whole other area of law, the plaintiff side that was operating, and dispersing funds out to clients using paper checks, sending billions, tens of billions of dollars to clients every year using paper checks. So given our payments chops, we decided we needed to digitize that workflow as well. So originally, we built the Confido disbursements product as a workflow tool. So we're like, hey, let's give firms on the plaintiff side better security, better audit trails, eliminate the return check issue. And then we'll do that and we'll fully integrate it with the firm's accounting system and case management system. So it'll be totally digitized, online, and integrated, and it'll be a great workflow experience. What we realized, though, as we were starting to roll it out, is it really wasn't so much a workflow tool as it was a client experience tool. So what we saw is that firms, when they were giving us feedback, is that the next generation of their clients in particular are really demanding fast digital payments experiences. And so we really pivoted the product to be less about workflows, although we still do a lot of that, and make it more about the client experience. So if you are curious, there's a lot of statistics out there. A lot of studies have been done about how, especially this, like I said, next generation of clients are really demanding much, much faster payments. and demanding digital. So just a few stats here. Clients reported that they were much, 2x more satisfied when the disbursement came in instantly and digitally. Um, and closer to what we're going to talk about today, 67% of consumers were more likely to keep doing business with senders that offer digital disbursements. So, you may or may not have repeat customers on the plaintiff side, but insert reviews, referrals for that evangelism. And then down at the bottom, I thought this was really interesting, and we see this a lot anecdotally, is that for 6 to 9 months after a great moment of delight, the customers that can really have a big lift in loyalty, purchase intent, throughout that 6 to 9 month period. So today we'll talk a lot about how to take that moment of delight, that all important moment where the client is getting their settlement after waiting for months or years, and feeding that back into the engine of growth for your firm. So with that, we're going to get interactive, and we're going to invite you to try out the disbursements process. So just like we did for Chris, you can scan this QR code, and it'll give you a few prompts. Fill it out, and you'll be able to get $10 in your bank account by the time we continue on with the webinar. So we'll sit here. We'll take a pause. John or Chris, if there's anything I missed or that you want to dive into, we should have teed up some music or something. But
I will say there was some prompts on there that kind of fail safe, right? I went through and I didn't have my, long story short, I didn't have a debit card linked to one of my emails. So I logged into my other email to use this code. And it essentially prompted and said, you can only get it once. If you already received the payment, you won't get it again. So
yeah.
just rest assured from the firm side, you're not going to be paying people more than once. um, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then it was really easy to go through and use a different email on my browser. So for whatever that's worth.
Yep. And this is a specific demo workflow that we built. In reality, the firm, the sort of ideal workflow that we support is they're generating a digital, a URL or a unique link for the client in their case management system, sending it out. It has, the amount of their settlement. It's tied to their name. So if they if someone else tries to, unlock it, they won't be able to without their contact info. If somehow they have all their contact info, they still won't be able to use it because the bank account or the debit card is tied to a different name than what's on the client record. So,
Okay. And I think that was one of the questions I had. Maybe we can leave this up and just kind of jump in. One of the questions I had is the security aspect of it. So you touched on that, but from a firm side, I'm sure that comes up a lot. But what are some of the, I guess, the aspects of it that help make sure that the security is there?
Yeah, the first one is that each link is unique and it expires, so that the firm can set the expiration date, expiration, number of days, and it's the format of the link is a URL that's kind of unguessable. So you have to have access to the email. Typically, it's emailed out, so you have to have access to the email, and then there's a secondary authorization through the phone number. So, you'll experience that if you're working through it right now. You get the code and then have to enter that code, and that's how you get access to your link. From there, there's an enhanced security feature that firms can turn on that substantially matches the name on the payment method to the client name. And if those are different, it will not let the disbursement go through. Moving to the very front end of the process, inside the firm, there's also a two-step approval process. So you someone at the firm is the drafter. Maybe it's a firm administrator, settlement administrator who's going through and teeing up all the disbursements, but they're not actually live until someone with approver privileges goes in and approves it all. So those are some of the kind of
Love it.
the key pieces that are most visible to the firms and clients.
Nice. I love that simplicity, right? And I think,
Yep.
when we talk about the benefit of this, you kind of mentioned this in some of the data you shared, but why do you feel the payout at the end of the case matters so much?
Yeah. There is a lot of research out there that if you're going through a trying, experience, that what you remember is the peak, basically the most either the worst or the just like a most memorable moment and the end. And we sit at the end. Oftentimes we're the last interaction that the firm has with the client. And making that really clean, really nice, really fast makes a big difference. And we know that because we provide support for the end clients. So if they are struggling to, enter their phone number or something like that, we get the call. So we help them through it, and we hear, the delight on the other end when they get their money, like you said, bank account before they even are able to log into their online banking. So um,
Makes sense.
that last little piece does really matter in terms of how the client perceives the firm in the long run.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
And I guess I would ask, kind of put it back on you a little, Chris. Like, what are some ways that firms can take, those high moments or that moment of delight and feed it back into, the growth engine? And I love working with you all and your team because kind of think of it like the car bumpers, like we're the back bumper and you're the front bumper. And
Yeah.
how do we like make those two things really awesome and match, the paint job on the rest of the car? So
Yeah.
how do you take that delight and then kind of feed it back into the growth engine?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to reviews in that aspect, right? That's one of the biggest benefits of the process of disbursement. I think a lot of firms traditionally kind of hold on to the check, try and have the client come in and have them leave a review at the same time at their like peak happy moment, right? I will say there's processes throughout and moments throughout to get those reviews, but I would say that that's a key benefit to the firm if we're talking pure, you know, how can we take that moment and actually get benefit from it? Reviews are going to be important, right? So if a firm improves their client experience and starts getting more reviews, that's going to impact your visibility, right? And I think one of the biggest things, and I'm going to kind of nerd out here and talk about how this can benefit the firm holistically, is reviews are one of the biggest local trust signals for Google. And industry studies show that, and you can get different data, but anywhere from 15 to 20% of ranking in that map pack or that top three comes from the reviews, right? And it's not just quantity, which everybody focuses on, but it's recency, consistency, keywords in the reviews, response rate. So the better your review, the happier the client, the more likely they're going to give some of that additional insight. A 5-star review with no content isn't as powerful as someone saying, so and so at this firm really helped with my car accident, and giving those additional keywords and then having the firm respond in timely manner appropriately. So those are all factors. And think about like a firm with 50 recent high quality reviews can sometimes outperform a firm with 300 old reviews, right? And reviews not only influence Google rankings, but they influence click through rates, conversion rates, referral validation. So reviews
Mhm.
again, you probably hear it a lot as a firm, but it's so powerful. Consumers trust reviews almost like personal recommendations now. Kind of can be scary if you think about it that way. But the
Yeah.
example I always use is if we're all going to go out to lunch after this and we look at some restaurants and we see this restaurant's 4.9 star, 500 reviews, and this one over here has 3.2 star, knowing nothing else about those restaurants, we're already discrediting that 3.2 star, right? So it's instant validation. And I think it's something that with the disbursement process, it's an additional point of leverage to use that excitement to leverage into a review. So
Yeah. Yeah, super interesting. One of the, and we were talking about this yesterday, one of the things that um, that firms tell us a lot is like, hey, one of my best sources of reviews is basically forcing the firm to come in or forcing the client to come in
Yeah,
because they are, because they have to come in to get the paper check. I have other opinions about that, but
yeah,
the uh, the that process can be automated, and like I said, if someone's getting their money instantly, we know, like I said, anecdotally, they're in a pretty darn good mood usually. And
yeah.
and so automating the sending of a review request through text message, email on the heels of that instant payment can be really powerful.
And I guess I'm curious, taking that old process and using your process, how would you position that to a firm if they say, well, we've been doing it that way. We have them come into the office and pick up the check. We have a QR code. That's the process now. What's your idea of how you flip that to still leverage the review? With the payment being so quick, there's, I would say, less time, right? Which is a value add, but in the same respect, how do you position that review? How is that something that you've kind of tackled?
Yeah, I think um, it's much more about like, hey, you had this great experience. You got your money. Um, Now, we'd love if you appreciated the service, give us a review and have that be, like I said, automated. And that way you can track the clicks. There's even ways to follow that all the way through to the actual review that gets left, so you can really see, is this experience really driving reviews for me.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Yeah. So there's still a process, just needs to be structured, right?
Yeah. And
And well thought out.
I think if you ask most firms that do bring clients in, what would your clients prefer? Would they prefer coming in or not? Most firms that we talk to say that the clients probably would not prefer to come in. They want their money and they want to move on. And so I think catering to the clients, doing, what's best for them is ultimately like the right thing to do, and they'll be happier for it.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense to me. Do you feel like there's a disconnect between how like the modern client experience feels during the case versus the moment they actually receive the money?
Yeah, oftentimes, there's all these tools for intake, for, AI, case management, case touch points, updates, and you can use all those tools. You can be very sophisticated, and then you get to the end and you go totally offline and, put something in the mail, put paper in the mail.
Yeah, that
And
makes sense.
I think we're excited about it because it's really the last leg of the journey, the case journey that's not fully online. And I do think there's a huge disconnect for many firms between the experience they provide up until the actual payment and then the payment. Of course, we're biased, but if you actually just look at all the chunks of a typical case, that is true for most firms. So,
Yeah, it is kind of interesting that the paper checks are still a thing with all the other AI and the automations and all the speed everywhere else. So
yep.
you're basically keeping that full circle, right? Making sure that all the other processes they were filling in, the modern fill for a firm,
Hmm.
with a lot of these processes, same thing here, right? Where you can make that payment super efficient. So I think that's cool.
Yeah. Yep. What I'm curious about, you do a lot of work with reviews and how reviews fold into the growth engine for the firm. Um, what's kind of the latest on the AI tools, the LLMs, and how they're looking at reviews? Like what's the link there?
Yeah, that's a big question. I think search behavior is shifting quickly, and consumers are using these large language models and asking things like best car accident lawyer near me, who's the best PI lawyer in Atlanta, as an example. AI platforms are increasingly prioritizing direct answers, more conversational queries. and then I would say more authoritative context, right? So for a firm, and I'll give like kind of a few, there's a lot of factors, but for a firm to appear more often in these large language models, you need to have strong reviews and social proof. The website structure and technical authority needs to be super high level. Quality content, topical depth. You need brand mentions, strong local presence, I would say. FAQ content is a big one, high quality backlinks, awards and badges, third party citations, the list goes on. So there's so many different
Whew.
factors. But when you think about it like this, to simplify it, firms that already invest in strong SEO generally have a big advantage because a lot of that is encompassing. There is some adjustments and some, I would say, some priorities more towards ranking in SEO versus the large language models, but the foundation is generally there for both, right? So strong foundation, getting a lot of love in Google, you're generally going to get a lot of love in SEO, or sorry, LLMs. I think there was a
Mhm.
study that they put out about ChatGPT. It said that 25 to 30% of its results aren't pulling from the top 10, in Google
Mm.
organic, but that means
Mhm.
that 75% are, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not 100%, but a large percentage is. And I think sometimes it's easy
Mhm.
to look at, what it is doing and not necessarily what SEO can build within that, right? So
Mhm.
um, the other thing is that some of the trends like Google AI overviews and large language models are actually reducing the clicks in a lot of search categories. So it just makes it so those trust signals are even more important, right? If you go to a standard search now versus a year ago, you're getting less click through on that page because of those AI overviews. But if you have the trust signals, you're more likely to get that click when it does happen. So it's kind of like
Mm.
it's no longer how do we just rank on Google. It's also how do we become the trusted source AI recommends, right? And that stems from all those things I listed, which reviews are a big part of that.
Yeah. What like a lot of firms they're getting a lot of word of mouth. They're very well established. They're probably feeling like, oh, I have enough work coming in. I mean, we know this from a macro level, like, there's much more legal work out there than there are firms and lawyers to handle it. So for those type of firms, like, does any of this matter, or um, how should they be thinking about this if they're like thumbs up, I have the business I want.
Yeah, it's a good question because I've actually more recently than not, I've been having firms come in and having conversations directly related to that. So they built their firm off of referrals and word of mouth. They have a lot of business coming in, but they're starting to see things change. They can feel it changing. Although they're
Hmm.
still getting that, they're not on the, up into the right scale they were. And a lot of that has to deal with the consumer behavior, and that's really changing. So even referred clients now are validating a lot more online. And I would venture to say this isn't an actual stat, but 10 years ago, if you get a referral, you're probably calling it.
Hmm.
Today, Google's actually saying that 70 to 75% of people that are referred are going online to validate first. So what that means is it's not as easy as getting a referral anymore. It's do you have enough of a reputation online to get that confidence built in those trust signals? So people Google reviews, attorney bios, results, your website, your awards, your content. So some more than others, but as a whole, people are searching. So firms aren't just competing against other firms now, they're competing in search in those AI platforms versus other digital brands. And I would say a stat that I find interesting that is pretty accurate, but sometimes it's higher. So roughly 80 to 90%, sometimes more, they say, of legal consumers research online before contacting an attorney. And that's even after receiving a recommendation. So think about that. 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 people that are searching for a lawyer are generally doing research online first. If you're not controlling the narrative and you're not where you want to be online, old, outdated site, things like that, you're not going to get that click. You're going to lower it. So, and this happened recently. Someone was referred by a friend to a firm. It was actually a friend within the firm, and they still hired another attorney because the online presence didn't build the confidence, right? And that was one of the reasons they reached out. They were like, we got to fix our website basically because we don't know how many other people we're losing. Um, so I would say referrals start the trust, but your online presence kind of confirms it, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, John and I spend a lot of time working with law firms, kind of day in and day out, and you see those websites, where the firm is well established, and you can tell that they haven't invested a lot in it, for a long time. And it's
Yep.
interesting to think about, like, on the back end they're probably feeling like, oh, we have enough, like we're in a good spot. But is there a cliff where things, the world gets digital enough that it kind of falls off a cliff at some point, and people are like, it's this digital office does not look like one I want to be, one I want to go to.
Yeah, and
So.
I think it also comes down to not putting all your eggs in one basket. You want to differentiate where your leads are coming from, and this benefits a lot. It's almost like an ecosystem where it. I think the firms that have built their business off word of mouth referrals are in such a good a position because if they can start earning organic and non-referred leads, they have the process built to get more referrals from those. So they're almost just amplifying what's already strong by driving in more business that doesn't directly know them. But if they're not on the first page of Google and they have no visibility, they're missing out on all those first bite at the apples, right? Those individuals that go on and search for a lawyer that don't know anyone, they're generally
Mhm.
clicking somewhere on the first page. They're not going to the second or third page. And then once they go to your site, does it build trust or is there a high bounce rate, lower conversion, right? So I think
Mhm.
it all kind of works together. And then we can talk about the review process. The more intake, the more clients, the more that builds. Well, now you have more reviews, you can build more trust. So it gets really exciting. But it really starts from creating visibility online and making sure that you understand how to kind of control that narrative. So um,
Mhm.
on your perspective, I'm curious, and I jotted this down. So when it comes to earning reviews and referrals, what do you think matters the most as far as the client journey? Like at what point, what moments are the most important in that journey to earn those reviews and referrals?
Well, I could go straight to the payment experience, but I don't think that would be, wholly accurate. We talked, one of our clients said something interesting the other day. They get their number one source of reviews is from a single intake, a person on their intake team who turns people away.
Mm,
And she is like incredibly good at getting people that they turn down to write 5-star Google reviews. And
that's
that's
awesome.
their number one source. So I just thought that was super interesting, and evidence that there are so many ways that or times throughout the life cycle of a case, that you can ask for those reviews. Going back to sort of the peaks, what are those high points? Is it, did they get a big number? Could you insert it at that time? Did they just have like a really good experience with you and your team? Did they get do you have a great way of keeping them informed about the case? We have a great partner of ours, platform called Case Status. It's basically a firm branded app that keeps people up to date on their case, and they're really good at kind of inserting those requests at key moments of the case. So it doesn't always have to be right at the end. It certainly doesn't always have to be in person right at the end. There's a lot of times when those reviews um, can be gathered, but if you do have a nice digital fast experience at the end, there's no reason not to automate a request that would go out for review right at that moment, right at the end. So,
Makes sense.
um,
Okay.
John, I don't know if you've that anecdote came to me. I know you were part of that conversation. Any other times that you've heard firms are being successful asking for reviews, or anything else you would add to that?
I think
Put you on the
to
spot.
No, absolutely. I think to complement what you said really at the end is the client already went through a traumatic experience, right, during the case. So at the end of the case, do they really want to go through that whole check process, right, of going to the firm, picking up the check, driving to the bank? Um, I think really once they are offered an electronic an instant option that they're just by nature willing to give that review, right? And that's not coming from me, that's coming from a firm's client per se. So um it's just the way that it's just honestly, it's just the way that just the case how it happens. They're just more willing to give a review. And it's like what you said, Chris, the reviews drive a lot of this, a lot of business for these firms. So, um, yeah, I mean, I could talk about this for a while. There's a lot. We've gotten a lot of feedback from firms. We got a lot of feedback from clients. But I think most importantly, at the end of the case, if they're offered that digital option, that digital method, that they are more willing to give a review. So I think it just comes full circle.
Okay.
It's fun for me because I sit in our office and I get to because we like I said, we do provide some support for clients if they're struggling at all to access their digital link. And hearing, the responses when they do get their money is just really exciting on the other end of the phone.
It's great.
Yeah. No, that's great. To throw a wrench in this, we have a question from one of the participants here, and they mentioned that adding your service actually has reduced the number of reviews they're getting. People aren't coming in, so they
Oh,
feel like it's difficult to get a review,
hmm.
when they have on the phone. So I guess we kind of talked about that, but now coming full
Yeah.
circle, what kind of solutions do you have to help them out specifically or provide feedback on that?
Yeah, we should we should definitely talk. I think so. One of them, we have some automation that can send out requests for reviews. When people do get their funds, there are some other options to automate those review requests and track them throughout the life cycle. So yeah, I'm glad that came up, and I'd love to dig in because that's definitely hearing, like I said, the people on the other end of the phone. I think it is a great opportunity, and would love to dig in there. And
Definitely.
now
Yeah, and I
I'm
think,
just seeing
oh, sorry.
the Q&A for the first time, so I was
Yeah.
looking at others. So
Yeah, I saw that and I wanted to wait till the right moment to answer. And then we had another question that is for you. Would the firm be able to tell if the client has scanned the code? Sometimes clients may not go all the way to complete the transaction. If we can see that they have started the process but didn't finish, we can reach out to them and proactively to see if they've encountered problems and need help.
yeah, so the QR code is actually just part of the demo process. Most of the time, they're getting an actual hyperlink in their email. Um, we don't um, we don't track clicks, but that's a really interesting piece of feedback to add sort of clicks on that link to the audit trail that firms get. If there
Yeah.
were any attempts, like you'll see, or if they unlocked it but didn't accept it, so they entered their phone number, they entered the code, or maybe they entered the wrong code for some reason. You'll see all that, but not clicks today. So Nancy,
Okay.
that's great. A great idea that we'll pass along to the product team.
Perfect. But at the end of the day, they'll know when the client fulfilled the payment.
Yep.
The firm gets alerted. Payment was
Hmm.
okay. Submitted.
Yep. And if they have
Just not if they start the
trouble,
process and don't finish it. You'll see that they accessed it. I guess you'll know, right? Because it'll actually show you that they've started the process, but it's not going to give you the email saying they finished it. There is, so it's there.
it'll
That's
yeah, it'll
that's
show
doing the fun.
you if they do have trouble getting in, it'll show you, hey, they were blocked on this attempt and any error
Perfect. Okay.
messaging they got, and then if they say typed in the wrong, banking information or card information, you'll also get all those things. But I love the idea of tracking clicks as well.
Awesome.
The product was built with the rules of professional conduct in mind. So every single firm will have access to a full audit trail as well on a per disbursement basis. So they'll be able to see a lot of information too, from everything from who created it at the firm, who approved it at the firm, all the way to the client, and how they
Perfect.
accessed it, what method they chose, delivery, timestamp, et cetera. So
No, that's awesome. So there's a trail to cover everything, right? So who created it? Yeah, I think that's great. Awesome. I guess curious, what do you guys both feel like percentage of clients that actually want their funds digitally? Kind of feeds off the question of, the old check route versus this. Do you have kind of a
Mhm.
finger on the pulse there?
Yeah, I would say it's because they do have the option to sort of opt out of the digital process. They can request a check and it sends a notice to the firm, and very like small single digits percentage do that. I would say that data is not certainly not perfect because I think there is some selection bias because some firms are asking people, do you want digital or the old process before they get to Confido?
Okay.
But once they do hit the link, the vast majority, 95 plus percent, want it digitally. And about 3 out of 4 of those clients want it instantly, as opposed to waiting for an ACH transaction. So 3 out of 4 are
Makes sense.
entering their debit card, getting that in seconds in their bank account.
Awesome. I would assume that's going to keep increasing, as technology continues to progress. I would venture to say, and you guys might have more of an idea on that, but 3 to 5 years from now, that'll be 99 out of 100 probably, but less and less paper stuff going on. So I think that's the firm getting ahead of that, being more, on top of that, I guess,
Yeah,
this
the
wave of technology, so to speak.
I think too, like we were looking at numbers the other day, the volume of fraud on paper checks is hitting about 0.3% of the total volume sent. So now you as
That's
the
crazy.
firm are probably not bearing 100% of that cost directly. It might be your bank that is, bearing some of that fraud or someone else in the system. But I think more and more banks are going to demand going digital because they're taking losses on paper checks. I mean, if you think about it, like you as the firm are sending out your account number and routing number, which can be used to run an ACH transaction, to thousands of people who, sure, they might be clients, but you know, I mean, you know your clients. There's a variety there, and
Yeah.
I think, given how dangerous checks are as a payment method over time, it will have to die out just due to the losses being taken.
Yeah. That makes sense. I would agree with that.
That might be one of the number one things when we sit down with firms and ask, um, what issues might you have at firms, with paper checks. Um, and really, a lot of these firms do not want their account routing number out there anymore. So that is a good point, Emery.
Chris, to kick it back to you, um, previously you were talking about all the things you can do to improve your digital presence, and there was definitely a lot there. Like, what do you typically say to a firm that wants to improve but maybe is feeling kind of overwhelmed with all of those things? How do they prioritize? How do they take like the first step?
Yeah. There's a lot, right? But if we kind of simplify it to what's lower hanging fruit, I would say the first thing, there's probably two things that you could do internally that aren't super complex. And then there's a couple of things that are a little more elaborate that you can either do in-house or maybe work with an agency to do. But the first one that you could do initially is the Google Business Profile. Your Google Business Profile is a huge asset. And again, that's where all your reviews are housed. But it's not that simple. Every year there's reports that come out on the different factors that help you rank better. And it kind of adjusts every year, right? But there's usually about 8 to 10 factors that are always super important. And I'll kind of give you a couple, like the reviews, the categories you're in, the services, photos, posts, FAQs, the back end information to answer those, AI buttons. So when you think about that, if you can go in and get your Google profile as optimized as possible and get it up to speed, that's step one. The next step is don't set it and forget it, right? It's a moving target. The Google profile is always evolving. So making sure that you have periodic checks to update based on what's important now. That in and of itself, I'll give you a couple examples because it's important. The primary category is the number one ranking factor, time and time again. Meaning, if you're a criminal firm and your primary category is law firm, you're telling Google you're a general law firm. You're not specializing in criminal. All the other firms that are specialized as criminal with that primary category are generally going to outrank you because that is giving Google that signal. What happens, and I had a firm do this live on a call. I said, hey, go ahead and change that, and I'll run some grids and check. The next day, in one day, he increased his visibility just off that one thing, right? So it can happen that quick. So that's an easy one. The second one is proximity. Can't control that. How close they are to you, that's something we can't control. And then there's a lot of other factors. Happy to hop on a call with anybody, kind of walk through some of those that you can do in house. But Google Business Profile, get in there and dial that in. That's usually one of the lowest hanging fruit. The second one is review process. Making that process systematic. Timing matters, and you want to remove friction. So, like what you guys offer is the ability to have quick payments, and I would almost illustrate it as another reason to ask for a review or another place to ask for a review. But I would also not recommend you wait till the end. And one thing you mentioned, Emery, was a firm using intake to get reviews. Yes, absolutely, right. So there's different ways to ask for reviews. It doesn't have to be a client. It can be anyone that can give honest feedback about the firm. And that's through intake. I mean, you see reviews sometimes where somebody says, it took them ten rings to answer the phone, 1-star review. It's not really justified, but Google does typically pull those down. So as long as they have honest feedback about the firm, they can leave reviews. So be creative, but don't do anything in the gray area. We don't want to buy reviews or gate reviews, right? So Google Business Profile review process, have those super dialed in. Those are the things you can do probably today. The other things that are very important is making sure your website has trust and conversion. So when somebody goes there, do you have clear calls to action, strong messaging, really good mobile experience, attorney credibility, and then practice area clarity? Those are the things that when somebody finally visits your site, all need to be in place. This next one's probably one of the harder ones, but it's super important is the SEO foundation. Think things like your technical cleanup, how your site navigation structured. Do you have localized content? Do you have an ongoing content plan? Do you have internal linking on the site? Is your off-page links, dialed in? Are you getting digital PR? So all those things are a little more complex, but you can start doing some of that now as far as developing the content plan and those things. And the last thing I would say is you could look at paid ads if you need some immediate demand, like if you need leads quick and you want to, I wouldn't use it as a crutch, but there is some really good paid ad sources out there like local service ads, pay-per-click, Performance Max that you can use to supplement what you're not getting right now and start pulling up top of page. One thing to note with paid ads, and I always like to point this out, is they're valuable. But if you ask 100 people, a lot of them bypass sponsored ads, probably 80 of them, right? Because Google says about 10 to 20% of people click through paid. So you can get traction on paid, but if you're not doing the foundation and you're not ranking organically, you're missing out on a huge piece of the pie. So I know that was a
Interesting.
long-winded
Interesting.
answer, but hopefully that gives you some feedback. So there's a couple easy fixes, and then there's a little more complex things, but those are all the foundational things I would button up for
Yeah.
sure. So
My big takeaway is call Chris.
SEO can be confusing, but it's exciting. So
Yeah.
oh, sorry, do you have something, Joe?
I think the one piece to I want to add as well is I know we're focusing a lot on the client experience, which is extremely important, but a lot of feedback that we get here at Confido too is a lot of firms were able to improve their internal processes with their disbursements workflow. So if you have a let's just say a high volume firm, for example, and you might have one or two people in your on your disbursements team and they're cutting hundreds, if not thousands of checks, then now the feedback that we've gotten is now they're able to save a lot of time and not having to manually write the paper checks. They don't have to physically walk down the hallway, have the managing partner sign off on those checks. Um, and God forbid somebody's not there in the office that day, right? So now it affects the client and their timing in receiving their funds. So I think too is what we
Makes
want to
sense.
highlight as well is not just the client experience, it's also we're improving the internal processes at the firm itself. So I thought that was a really exciting point too. So um, yeah, yeah, just
Yeah,
want to add
makes
that in
sense.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I think the process is crucial. And the one thing about reviews in that process is always ask and ask more than once. And I think sometimes firms get very focused on only asking when the case is won at the very end. And I think what you guys do allows that last ask, but there's a lot of opportunity to add leading up to it and then use that as kind of a hopefully this an additional ask will work because of how quick the payment is. And I would almost venture to say the payment's so quick, if they haven't left a review to that point, but you've already asked multiple times in a positive way, that should help kind of cement it because they're like, wow, that payment was quick. And then they're happy, happy, happy. And then they're really happy. But if that's the only time you're asking, I do think you're missing the boat because you're expecting that one shot to perform 100% of the time. If you can get the review right when the case is won, or leading up to it or throughout the process, then you don't have to wait until the disbursement process, right? That's just going to be it's going to make things even smoother at the end. But I would say that, and then I don't know if there's a process built in, but if they don't leave it at the disbursement, there's still a way to continue to ask them professionally. I would say combining text and email works really well. Spoiler alert, text generally works the best, where you send them a direct link to leave a review because it's right there. Click, boom, it pops up. Expecting them to go through email can slow things down on the review process sometimes. So
Yeah. Yeah. And there's tools, like I said, with the automation we can set up to, that will like, it'll run reminders if people didn't click or didn't engage with the text or the email. We'll follow up with them. But
nice.
I also do know it's, once the client gets their money, sometimes it can be hard
A
to
little
get a
harder.
hold of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
So what about one of the last couple questions I have here? I was thinking is firms like the ethics side of it with digital disbursements. Can you speak to that concern? I'm sure some firms have kind of maybe a concern around that.
yeah, yeah. So this does come up a lot, particularly like in the sales process because as we all know, it involves dispersing money out of your trust account. So there's a lot of sensitivity around it, a lot of rules around it, and you know, we've had ethics attorneys review the rules in all states and feel pretty comfortable that there's nothing preventing a firm from digitizing the disbursement process, and in many cases, the state has specific guidance on how to do that. And I'm not a lawyer, and this is totally tongue in cheek, but there are some things I think in the opposite direction that make it a little bit questionable whether it's actually ethical in 2026 to use a paper check to disperse money.
Makes
It's
sense. Yeah.
pretty much every state says you have to disperse that money promptly. And is a paper check prompt in 2026? I'd argue maybe not. And all states have rules about that audit trail, making sure you know who approved it, having a unique number on it, and understanding like actually who accessed that money. And you don't really get that with paper checks. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, we've heard from some firms that like, hey, I need to stay on paper because I need a paper trail. But we're like, well, just because those things are both made of
Yeah.
paper does not mean
Doesn't mean it's
you
any better,
automatically
right?
get the paper trail.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's
um,
fair.
so yeah, it's a little tongue in cheek, but it does in many ways make it a lot easier to comply with the ethics rules to do things digitally because you do get that audit trail and it certainly can be prompt.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's great. Um,
We do have, by the way, a state by state guide that
oh,
I
okay.
can drop here in the app. Or I don't know, John, if you have access to it, maybe you can drop it in um, the chat where people can go and download that.
Sounds good.
And we have a decent amount of time left, about 10 minutes. If anyone out there has questions, definitely throw them in the Q&A um, for myself or Emery or John, and we can definitely answer those. I'm trying to think here. I had one more thing. It was off the top of my head. I can't. It'll come back to me. Give me a second.
Awesome. Yeah, I know, Chris, one of the things I really appreciate about your team is you're out there a lot. So I know like if you're a law firm and you go to a lot of the conferences or whether it be a user conference for case management or an AAJ, what have you, you all are really accessible and everybody I've talked to knows a lot about this stuff. So
Yeah, I
um,
appreciate that. And I think my perspective is I love talking about legal. I love diving into it. It's very much more of an analysis. Every firm's in a different situation. So it's kind of fun looking at every firm's unique situation and understanding how do they maximize their current opportunity, but if they are looking to grow, what are those next growth steps? And it doesn't always mean it's a good fit for us, but I think giving a
mhm.
client and a potential client then the information on what they should be doing or give them some good strategy is a lot of
Mhm.
fun. So, again, we're not the best fit for everybody, but those conversations are, they don't cost anything. They're just fun to have and build connections. So if anybody is looking to
Yeah.
connect, that's kind of how we approach it. It's just, you know, individualizing, your market, your firm, and what it would take. So, question popped up here for you. Is there a good way to test if the payment experience actually leads to reviews?
Yeah, so like I said, we can set up those no code workflows using also like pairing it with a third party tool that can track those clicks and track those and actually, I mean, it's not a, I mean, you know better than I do, but it's not a perfect science matching the client to the actual end review, and Google sort of intentionally um, uh, makes that connection hard. But there's some good tools
Yep.
out there that can do a decent job at following that person through the review journey and seeing if they actually left a review. And so you can set up that automation so you can see, okay, this person got the text message, clicked on it, went to this, went to the review site, and we're pretty sure that that person left, this review. So you can actually
Mhm.
measure, hey, am I getting good reviews at that moment, at the end of a case?
Yeah, and I think that's important too because that kind of data is going to amplify and it's going to get them more excited to use it and
Mhm.
lean customers towards that process, right? So,
Yeah.
and there's always going to be outliers. It's not a perfect situation where, sometimes like the individual mentioned earlier where they were seeing less reviews. I think that's
Mhm.
something that, strategizing on how we can track that and amplify it. We don't want that to happen, obviously, right? But
Yeah. Mhm.
that's something that we should be able to correct because your process makes it easier, right?
Yeah.
Um, so we had
Mhm.
another question on here. I think this one would be geared towards me. So is what if we're investing in marketing already, but not, or sorry, still not getting the kinds of cases we want? What usually causes that? I think it could be a lot of things, right? I think this is important to look at because we want to understand without making rash decisions, like what kind of get an idea of is it the wrong targeting? Do we have the wrong keywords? Are we going after the wrong markets? It can also be weak conversion, meaning the site doesn't build trust, so it has weak call to actions. So really tracking that user experience on the site. If the lead quality is low, that's going to obviously make things harder, right? Traffic does not equal qualified cases, so it's important to understand where that traffic's coming from. There's one example I have that always sticks out to me. It was a firm that only did motorcycle, and they, had done a lot of articles on, different things related like road rash, how to heal road rash, etc. And those pages of content started booming for them. They were getting tens of thousands of visitors a month for articles like how to heal road rash, types of road rash. But they were a localized firm doing motorcycles, so none of that helped them. And it was discouraging because they had all this traffic and it wasn't turning into cases. But when you dive deeper, you understand the type of traffic coming to the site just wasn't ever going to turn into qualified cases, right? So that's a big thing is understanding the marketing strategy leading to the keywords you're getting and the traffic. The other thing is weak intake process, slow response time, missed opportunities. So intake is super key. Getting somebody to actually reach out to your team, and if it's speed the lead, right? And if that's not happening, they're going to call another firm and they're going to gobble it up. So then the last thing I would say is lack of authority. If you have weak reviews, weak local presence, weak online trust, you're going to get lower authority calls. One example is a lead calls the top firm on the map pack. They don't want to take the case. They call again. That firm doesn't want to take the case. They call down. If you're down here at the bottom, you're getting a lot more of those calls where all the other firms above you didn't want to take the case. So it looks as though you're getting a lot of low quality leads because you're not getting any of the first bite at the apples, right? So it's kind of building that up. But yeah, more traffic doesn't always mean better cases. So I think the goal is better visibility to the right people at the right time.
Is for some of those, if you're high traffic, low conversion, do you ever recommend like referral, like implementing more of like a referral, like co-counsel program or anything like that to kind of monitor, like if you do have a great converting page or something like that to bring them in and refer them out, or have you seen that be successful,
Yeah.
or maybe that's too far up funnel to really like
I mean,
leverage?
it's a good thought. In some cases, that makes a ton of sense. But a lot of traffic that we're talking about is vanity metric traffic, meaning it's super exploratory and non-relevant. So they're looking up in this example earlier, different types of road rash. They're not even looking for a law firm. They're just looking for They're
Yeah.
learning, I have road
Mhm.
rash. I wonder what kind it is, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's getting traffic for somebody reading an article that just doesn't have anything to do with what you do. So how
Yeah.
could you, on the flip side, how could you spin that into an FAQ based on what somebody would be asking when they are looking for or they've been in an accident, right? So that's
Mhm.
but if you are getting traffic for like actual conversion traffic where they're actually converting, but they're not in your area, that's a whole different ballgame, right? So if those articles are producing like a state over and people are calling
Mhm.
in consistently for a motorcycle lawyer, well, yeah, I think that's something I would definitely look at, venturing that. But then there's also state over state and different rules. So
Mhm.
it's understanding what's okay as far as referring out in your state. And yeah. But it is a good thought. I mean,
Awesome.
depending on the
Yeah.
type of traffic. Let's see. There's no more questions here. Any additional thoughts for you or John on my end before we hop off here in a couple minutes?
No, it's been awesome, Chris. I always learn a lot talking, like I said, to your team. So I've got a few nuggets to take back to our own business here. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's great learning more about you guys and what you do. And I think it was just a fun conversation. Um, Anybody else have questions out there? Let us know. Feel free to, I'm actually going to share my screen for 1 second
Oh, that's
here.
right. I stopped sharing and our
No, you're good. And then
lost
I'll
our
give you guys
contact
some
info.
quick access links. I always like to make sure I'm sharing the right screen. One time I shared my calendar. That was fun. And then nobody said anything for a couple minutes. Oh, great.
Yeah.
So you guys can see this code, right?
It looks like it's screen sharing is paused.
Oh, interesting.
Chris is.
Let me pull this back up. Share, share. Is it still saying paused? Is it there
Yep,
now?
we're good. Yep, we
Okay.
got the QR code.
So right here, anybody that wants to download this right here, this is a document on how to dominate chat, GPT, sorry, and Gemini. And then these links right here, these QR codes, are those to your guys' calendars? What do those go to?
Those that's to grab time for a demo. So if you want to
Perfect.
explore digital payments and digital payouts, you can scan that.
Awesome. Well, I'll leave this up for a second. Appreciate both you guys. If anybody else thinks of anything offline, feel free to reach out. We have our emails right here, and then we'll have this webinar available um, on a rewatch.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Don't forget to get your $10.
Yeah, I already got mine. All
Yeah.
right. See you,
All
everyone.
right. Thank you all.
Thank you
Bye.
all.